when a student is getting into college, they should ask themselves, is my investment worth? Because as a college and a university is nothing more than an information supermarket, where I am giving you my money to buy what? What is the product? Information, knowledge that is structured. So if the knowledge that you're selling me, I'm going to have a title doctor, but I will never be able to practice because there is no work. Is it worth to even go into that college? To that, the answer is no. So you start asking, what is the need?
Wadau, leo tuko na good news and bad news. Which one would you like us to start with?
Do you know you can use rain as a weapon?
Rain as a weapon?
Yeah, you can make a place flood. So you can create a crisis.
What are you saying? Our guest for this episode, Robert Mwangi, is a certified public accountant. Now, when it comes to a conversation about money, ako flexible kuanza na good news.
So let's do math. So 10 shillings, you buy, let's say data, or you data for, you can buy data for 10 shillings or 20 shillings. Mm-hmm. So if you have 20 million people buying data for 10 shillings, today only, million. That's 200 million today.
Robert Mwangi is a prolific author with several books under his belt, and he's on a mission to show you how much money this country has and how you can get it. In your book, umesema their families yenye wanapika bila mafuta, but they are feeding avocado to dogs.
Yes, because they don't know that there is oil. All that you need to do is bask it in the sun for a few days, squeeze it out, and oil comes out. I'm
your host, Dr. Kingori, and here's another reason to stay subscribed to our channel. Kama hauja subscribe, this right here is another reason to hit subscribe. Now turn on the notifications bell. Na ukicheki seti yetu inakubamba maze, this is happening at Wojo Africa. Kama uko familiar na the concept ya co-working space, look no further than Wojo Africa. It's a premium co-working space located in Upper Hill, Nairobi. Kama unahitaji ofisi, you need a place to meet somewhere respectable, furnished to international standards na very good and competitive rates. You need to look no further than Wojo. Contact details on how to reach the team at Wojo ndio hizi tumewekea hapa kwa screen. I have to tell our audience that I have to correct my record. I have had a different money syllabus, and this is a work of genius, and I hope we'll get to explore as much as possible.
Thank you.
As the conversation continues. And you share with me an idea that I have told to someone who I consider an intellectual, and they were very excited. The concept of blood circulation in relation to money. Ebu launch it for us.
So thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate
that, and appreciate the comment that means a lot.
Thank you.
So like I was telling you earlier, I have a background in nursing, critical care nursing.
Yes.
And that has something to do with open heart surgery. I worked in that space. And when I went to finance, you kind of use that, extrapolate what you've been learning in how body works to how the economies work.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that we only have 5 liters of blood, on average, 5 liters. But on a daily basis, your heart makes that 7,200 liters of blood that you need every day.
The same 5 liters?
The same 5 liters comes back to your heart every minute.
Okay.
Like every minute, 5 liters. The next minute. So 5 times 60 is what? Is
72.
No.
5 times 60?
Yes.
Oh, 120.
No, it's not 120.
5 times 60?
Yeah, 5 times 60 is 120.
Yes.
So if you do that for another 60 minutes to make an hour, and then an hour to a whole 24 hours, that's 7,200 liters.
Yes.
Simply by circulating the same 5 liters.
The same blood?
The same blood.
Yes.
And so if we did not have that circulation, for you to live for 70 years, you would need 183 million liters of blood to live for 70 years.
You've written 284 million?
No, 183 million liters of blood.
Okay.
To live for 70 years.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So then I think about the massiveness of that. Mm-hmm. And that means if it was not a circulation,
Yes.
that blood would be coming from somewhere, and you'd have to live for 70 years, you would have to have a guarantee of 183 liters of blood that is coming from somewhere, because it's not inside of you.
Million liters.
Million liters of blood,
Yes.
right? And that is draining through you. So that means every minute you would need some source of blood that is, you're getting 5 liters because you're also draining 5 liters. So it would be connected to some tank that has the capacity to supply you every day, every minute with 5 liters of blood. But you're able to do that with simply the heart doing the circulation, what it does. And that's how an economy is supposed to work. Unfortunately, this economy is a drainage. So you make an assumption that there is so much money, and because we're importing everything, you are assuming because you use money to buy those things from abroad, you're basically making an assumption that you have so much money. If you're to look at SGR, for example, because I call it, it's part of what I call an instrument of death, right, for this country. An instrument of death, just like Lamport. And I'll explain how. So if you're having all these imports, which means you're using money in Kenya to buy things abroad, right? So what you see is the goods coming this way. If money was not being wired, those trains going back would have tons of money
going out.
And that's what happens on a daily basis. So you have trains using SGR, basically exchanging goods with money. But where is our money coming from? It's not circulating.
Someone asked a question in that, and I believe it's a very intellectual question. Like when you go to a supermarket with 1,000 bob note, okay, and you buy goods worth 1,000 bob note, what is more value to you, the 1,000 bob you spent or the goods that you've taken?
It depends on what the good is, right? So such that if you...
In this context.
So in this context.
Yes.
It depends on what it is. So if we are importing soap, for example, the soap is important to you, but why are we importing soap? Why are we getting our soap from Egypt? We do not have any capacity to make any soap in this country, such that the biggest and the best-selling soaps in this country, detergent, whether it's a body soap, we're talking about detergent to wash our clothes, it's coming from Egypt, using COMESA as a way of accessing this market without tariffs. So the question is, why, even though the soap is important to me, why do I have to buy soap from Egypt, made in Egypt?
Then, Basi, let's go to your example so that we bring this point home, importation. Your inspiration to come up with this concept is when you visit the supermarket at Junction, right? And you see the supermarket, how the goods have been stocked, and the percentage of which has been from outside.
Yes.
Okay? Then you go out and you see something else. So when you go into a supermarket, like go in a supermarket right now, how much of that which we see in a shelf can be produced locally, and what does that mean?
That's 90% of the things. So this is the background when I was writing that chapter in Money Circles. So I've been away from the country for about 12 years, so I'm coming back. And I have these ideas about how we can change this country, but I'm not sure. So I go to a supermarket. And for me, it almost became like a scene of crime, some sort of crime, because everything that I checked to see where it's made, it was either saying South Africa, Thailand, Egypt, some things from Europe, air fresheners from Poland, milk from Ireland, everything from other lands, not our land.
So we are financing other economies.
So we are basically not just financing, we are employing people in those lands. When we exchange, when you substitute goods for people, meaning those goods that we are buying were made by some people, some employees. So we have an employment here, huge unemployment of millions and millions of people, graduates, because our work is where? Is abroad. Because we literally, when you go to any supermarket or any shop in this country, you're literally not in this country. You're buying things abroad. You're in a shop. It's almost like you time traveled. So you're either in China or someplace in Europe. Can you imagine like milk, powdered milk from Europe? And yet we have cows in this country. So you're literally going to a shop in another country. So you employ people who made those products. So those are engineers, those are accountants, those are people in transportation. That's the whole supply chain that makes up product. That you are activating economic activities in another country where your child or you yourself would be employed in that shop, but by the virtue of buying that product abroad. And that's what we do when we're buying things. All the 90% of the things that fast-moving consumer goods that we have in our supermarket, most of them are coming from abroad.
And you have a very interesting mathematics of, we look at a slum in Kenya as a place where like poverty ndio nini, but kumbe this poverty, tunaangalia poverty like low income, low access, but kumbe there is someone who looks at this and this is money in billions.
Yeah, that's how they've looked at the entire of Africa.
Kwanza so, ulinifanyia hesabu ya soap. You did soap?
Yeah, wacha nikupatie hesabu ya soap. Yes. So first, the bigger picture is the world population in most of in the West is declining. So most of those manufacturers are looking for market to replace the people that they were selling soap to, and probably they're going to retirement home, and some of them basically are unfortunately dying.
By so declining, yes. Like there's a measure to how fast it's declining.
Yes, yes. For example, the birth rates in comparison, the birth rates in Britain is a quarter of what is in Uganda, meaning you have more kids being born in Africa, right? 4 times. An average is 4.7 in Uganda or in Kenya, compared to 2.3 in actually 1.4 in the UK. So basically, they cannot even replace themselves. So the replacement rate for human beings is about 2.3. So every person on average have to have 2.3 kids for population to replace itself. Some places in the West have 1.4. So they are basically, you cannot even replace yourself, right? So those are declining populations, right? So in Africa, on average, you could say it's about 4. So we have a lot of people. Those people right now, if you look at Kenya, 65% of all Kenyans are less than 25 years of age. 65%. And so that's a huge market. So
65% of Kenya are less than
25 years of age.
Over 65% of Kenyans are Gen Zs.
Are Gen, exactly. So
okay, that's inaccurate.
They have
Gen Zs and below.
And below, yes. Yeah. So they have a spending power of about $5 a day. And there's somebody
$5 is 500
shillings. So that,
give or take.
Yes. So there's somebody who've looked at that 500 shillings, and have said, if I can only get, let's look at let's say a telco, right? I just need 10 shillings from that 500 shillings you're going to be spending today, right? So let's do math. So 10 shillings, you buy, let's say data, or you data for, you can buy data for 10 shillings or 20 shillings. Mm-hmm. So if you have 20 million people buying data for 10 shillings, that's today only, million. That's 200 million. Today.
That's $2 million in a day.
That's $2 million in a day. So soap, they packet. So some of these companies coming in is going to Africa, so it's a huge market in the slum. In fact, if you look at some of these adverts, you can tell it's done. There's one toothpaste that have done it in a slum, and they have done it with a little sachet that costs about 15 shillings, just like the soap. If you're to multiply again 10 million people, and we'll do, because we are 50 million people, so we'll do 10 million and then multiply by 4, so 40 million people. So let's say a sachet of 15 shillings to buy, you're talking about soap, to wash clothes on Saturday. 15 shillings, 10 million people, that's 150 million shillings on one weekend. So if there are 40 million people who are going to be washing clothes using that one sachet, that's 600 million on one weekend. Most of it from very poor people. So they're not coming here to make big changes. It's basically to extract wealth from poor people. And that's going to be, it's basically become an economic slave.
Let me ask a stupid question. And I know it's stupid. Yeah. Like there is a narrative, ya watu, like if your money cannot help you do what you do, eat that money. So I already know, najua mbele, like what the solution for this should be and how to correct it. But then I'm like, 15 shillings, labda the person in the slum is thinking, Like, how can 15 shillings change my life?
So the person in the slum is not the one who's going to change the situation.
Because it looks like it's helping.
Yes.
It looks like I'm selling you something you can afford. It looks like I understand your needs. Okay?
Yes.
At the back of my mind, I'm marveling at the opportunity how Kenyan graduates can tap into this 600 million every weekend. I'm already thinking about that.
Yes.
But is it whose mindset needs to change? The consumer or the person who should drive the agenda to produce locally?
I think all of us need to, because you need to have the people who are being driven and the people who are being led to think the same for them to come to a place where they realize unless we make these things here, we're going to collapse, because we do not have infinite capacity. Just like we're talking about 183 million liters of blood, we do not have infinite capacity to buy these things. So for this person who they're targeting these 15 shillings or 500 shillings in total per day, where does the person get this money from? So you're assuming somehow in the slum they dig money. So at some point it cannot be, even that cannot be sustained. So at some point it's going to collapse. Where does that person who is in the slum getting these 500 shillings on a daily basis? Where we're importing more and more stuff, that what could be employing that person? But we have a famous tire company that could not sustain production here and they moved to China, right? So when that happens, when everybody's moving, I mean, our t-shirts are printed well. You can say in River Road, but during campaigns, where do politicians bring the t-shirt? They import. So that's, I'm just giving that as an example of the other million products that we consume in this country, or hundreds, thousands of products we consume in this country that are mostly coming abroad. But for every product that is coming from abroad or from another country, we're literally employing, it's somebody who could be employed here or was employed here, but now that work has gone abroad. So we're assuming that the slum has infinite capacity to somehow get 15 shillings or 500 shillings. At some point, it cannot be sustained.
Let me apologize to my friend Miano Modi. He was on the show and he told me, he shared an idea of how he used to make soap on this show immediately after high school, ile ya kukoroga, and I laughed at him so much. I apologize to Miano.
You should actually write a letter.
I will write. Miano, please, this is a formal apology.
Yeah, all right.
So it's like we are climbing a tree from the top.
Yeah, and let me actually jump on why the soap is important. We learned how to make soap. I did 844. In Form 2, sodium hydroxide na some mafuta. That's soap basically. The other thing,
mafuta ya nini?
Mafuta yote. You mix sodium
petroleum ama mafuta, unajua mafuta ya kupika, mafuta sodium hydroxide na?
Yeah, like it could be avocado oil, it could be corn oil, it could be your petroleum. Basically you mix that na either potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide. That's soap. Is that basic? So basically, kitambo, there are people who used to mix mafuta ya kondo after kuchinja with ash. You mix those after you filter the ash up, boil them together, and you're making soap. That's how basic that is. And yet we have to have our soap imported from.
Aki mniombe. Amesema mafuta ya kondo nikaweka M. Ona. So it's like we are climbing a tree from the top. Yeah. Let's simplify ndio tukuje hapa kwa hizi opportunities, because my akili yangu is pregnant with the content nimekutana nayo hapa. Now,
tumefika pomoni.
So the problem we are dealing with now, and we work backwards. I knew things were bad when I saw unemployed doctors. Tunaambiwangwa soma, you can become a doctor, it's a sure bet. Konado, right?
Yeah.
I've seen unemployed doctors, right? You have an explanation how we are where we are in terms of unemployment. So please break down for us how we are where we are now, and then how it can be solved so that people can see why they don't have money now. Ama, we don't have money.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first is a country that does not change its policies or labor policies based on the need. So we structured our colleges and our universities to manufacture people who can work. And four-year colleges were supposed to be degrees for people who can manage the workers, right? So the economy changed.
The degree concept was to create managers.
Yes, to supervise the diplomas, the people the technical people. Okay. And the technical, if you look at TUK, it was a polytechnic first.
Yes.
The engineer that was coming from the diploma level engineer that was coming from polytechnic, right? Whether that's Mombasa or here in Nairobi.
Yes.
They were very good because
that
they
has
are
been
technical.
Said on this show.
Yes, because they were technical people. So the 4-year degree was supposed to do what? To manage. That was the very same thing actually even in medicine. Is having a consultant doctor, under him working a medical officer who can see so many patients, but then it's like you have this expert who is able to see so many things and is able to help many medical officers. And then it came down to clinical officers. So the idea, so now, because we didn't have enough doctors and we didn't have enough capacity to train so many doctors, right?
Umesema,
yeah.
Trained for consultancy.
For consultancy.
I don't want you to lose that point.
Yes.
And I don't know if this complements that example.
Yeah.
I asked my daughter what she would like to become when she grows up.
Yeah.
She said a nurse.
Okay.
And then nikamuuliza, why don't you want to be a doctor? And he said, doctors don't do anything. They just talk.
Wait, okay.
And I think this is because when she goes to the hospital, she only walks to the doctor, tells the doctor, Nini, what's the problem? And then she gets referred to the other people who do the job. Is this now the concept in play? Like ideally, not to, as in this is a kid, this is an example I'm just looking at. When you say consultant, we have an oversupply of people who should manage.
And that's the thing. So, and I'm glad your daughter is doing nursing. I actually did a Bachelor of Science in nursing.
No, she's not doing.
I mean, no, she will do that. I mean, that's she,
Yes.
So, and there's nothing wrong with being a doctor.
Yes.
And nursing and being a doctor are very different things. Nurses are very holistic in how they approach things. Medicine is a bit fragmented. So you have a renal doctor, you have a heart doctor.
Understood.
But nurse has to be able to see all that.
Understood.
Use the entire person, right?
Yes.
So there is no competition between the complementary disciplines.
Yes. Now to support your point.
Yeah. So consultation. So I was talking about these unemployed. Why do we have unemployed doctors? So then we, as a country, we continued. So we know that we only have possible slots. We'll say 50,000 of doctors that we need, or 100,000 that we need in this country, right? So remember that spot can be filled by a medical officer and a clinical officer. So this medical doctor from this economy is very expensive. So somebody decides, I'm going to run a hospital, but I'm going to run with very few consultants. And that's how, but then the factory does not stop producing, saying, no, we already have enough consultants. So because the factory makes money by producing something that we actually don't need. And actually that's our problem. By producing graduates, so you're highly trained. So as a society, meaning our taxes, we are spending money producing people to do things for which there is no slots to do those things. Where we should turn around and say, what we need is soap. Let's close this school and make a school for producing soap and toothpaste. That's how that doctor is going to get a job.
But then the problem is, will you close down different schools and open schools for everything that we need to produce? It should be strategic.
It's configuring those schools. We don't need to build new schools. It's just thinking mindset and realizing. So let me put like in the US, right? In the US, the labor department knows how many doctors that country needs for next year, for the next 10 years. And they know how many engineers, how many teachers they need, because they are studying that information, and that's what a labor department or labor ministry is supposed to be doing. So then you advise schools, and they have people that are called advisors. And sometimes they will actually advise you towards a route, because that's where you know this is where jobs are going to be. That list comes from the Labor Department, that there are slots that are going to be opening up in the next year. And so the schools basically are training people to fill up those slots, not the other way, where we are training people, and somehow it's like, we use the word tarmacking, right? Like you're just everywhere dropping your CVs to get employment, but that employment does not exist and never existed even when you're in school to begin with. So somebody promised you. In fact, this is what I've said. Our young people, the Gen Z, there's a drinking problem in a lot of places in this country, especially Central. And they say, why are they drunk? And I say, they are drunk. Then they do not, because they say they should be working. But I'm like, they're drunk because they did not get the work that we promised as a society once they graduate. So they wake up and they're like, whatever promise I was given when I was going to school is not there. It was, and when I come out with a degree, the day after I graduate, my parents they tell me, you know what, we've done what we've done. It's up to you now to pick up from here. And they tell you, you know what, there's a car wash that is here. You can unaweza jishikilia as you wait for opportunities to open up. I mean, like I went to school so I can get a job. Why are you telling me to go wait in a car wash? That was started by somebody who, decided, you know what, either I'm not going to continue with school, or there was no school fees, or whatever it is. They didn't go to school, so they have work because they didn't go to school. But I went to school to get work, which I didn't get. It's ironical in many ways. I don't know if it's making sense.
No, I'm getting it.
And it's very confusing. So what we need to do is, as an economy, there are certain things you only have to do it from a policy level. Policy level meaning that we cannot. This one now, I mean, economy, they call it political economy. You cannot divorce an economy from politics. That's why you do not need blind people to be in front of you. Like just simply somebody in front of you and you call them a leader and they are completely blind. They don't know where there's, I mean, they are there to elevate themselves, to enrich themselves. They're not thinking about the problems that need to be solved. That takes so little to solve in this country.
Takes so little to solve.
Yeah.
It's very hopeful to have a conversation with you, and I hope we'll be able to bring that upper. You say money is there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we already have a situation that, by the way, we are overproducing people for slots, and this is very painful to hear actually, for slots that did not even exist when you were in school.
When you're in school, they were not there. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Where is the money now? Let's treat this as a low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
We have graduate CVs, indio?
Yes.
Hakuna job.
Yes.
Where do we start?
Fast-moving consumer goods.
Fast-moving consumer goods.
Yes. We're talking about toothpaste, we're talking about soap, we're talking about things that we can easily... We're not
things that people use daily.
Daily. That's what it like, with toilet paper.
Yes.
Toothpaste.
So how do you jump from a jobless graduate to Manu Chandaria?
Collaboration. Like these things don't... I think there's... unfortunately, Aga Khan just passed on.
The
right?
fourth, yes.
If you look at Aga Khan, people think it's his money. He belongs into a society that contributes into whatever he's able to do. He's a
the Ismaili group.
He's called Prince. A prince implies a what?
Royalty.
So he's basically...
There's a community.
He's a president, basically, behind a community that lives all over this world. And that's why he died in one place and was buried in a different place.
That some of the biggest brands tunajua, insurance, hospital, media, foods. Yes. Unfortunately, sorry for cutting you short. No, it's okay.
Unfortunately, we were brought up, because our problems are also psychological, right? Let's start from there. It does not mean that it's permanent. We can change it, and this is the diagnosis. So we were brought up in a culture, and I told you the first four letters of the word culture is what?
Cult.
It's a cult. We were brought up in a cult in which we do not know how to collaborate. We are always competing. Like number one, number two, number three. Mulikuwa mnapangwa line.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's a socialization that makes you think that in life you're supposed to always compete with people. And it's actually very sad. You will see people with big vehicles competing with somebody, it's almost like you don't have right of way, or the border guy does not have right of way. You find people, it's like we're always trying to shine, to be number one, even where there is no competition. You find people working in restaurants with car keys. I hear car keys in Kenya don't fit in the pocket. Like, people work with car keys. And I'm like, the other day I was in a grain market in Thika, and a guy walks, he's bouncing. You can tell, like, there's something he's like that makes him stand out. Yeah, like he's showing off. And in his hand were keys, and I'm like, why? Like, parking is so far from there, and yet he's walking around with the keys and making sure that everybody can see the keys. And I'm like, so there's always a constant competition in our lives, trying to beat the other person, even when the competition is, we are supposed to be beating poverty, not other people. So collaboration, and when I say collaboration, let me give you a quick example of how it actually almost comes out as an individualistic mindset, which it is in that competition. I was telling somebody, think of students staying in one place. Let's say 100 students in one building, just to show small scale how that collaboration can work. And they each pay, again, 50. Look at that, 50 shillings on a daily basis is the average that the student buy on data on a daily basis to nukiwa, right? And there's nothing against that. If there are 10 million students that are doing that today, how much is that?
500 million.
Okay, let's say these 100 that live in the same place, on a daily basis, they spend 5,000 to buy data, 5,000 separately. So in 10 days, how much is that? 50,000.
50,000.
That's 150,000 they spend on internet on a daily basis. They can buy routers and share internet, and it will not cost them more than 10K together. That's a power collaboration.
But then you're firing the guy who's supplying the internet.
We're not firing. Then what is it now? And now that's what we're doing. So now we have money. It's what we're doing, because once I buy data, for the most part, unfortunately, some of these telcos are not wholly owned in Kenya. 60% of their ownership is abroad. So you're literally sending that money abroad, right? So remember the drains. So that's another drain.
Yes.
So now you have money that you have saved that you can put together to starting this factory we're talking about. That's a solution. Have we gone to the bank? We are basically simply, so let's look at, that's 10,000 people. So let's look at 10 million. So 10 million people buying data for 50, that's how much? That's 500 on a daily basis. So every 10 days, they're spending what? 5 billion worth of data every 10 days. How many 10 days do you have in a year?
But
so we have the money, we have the finance. So we've not gone to get a loan.
Agreed.
Anywhere.
But then there's something else that is off in the equation.
Yeah.
The infrastructure to coordinate that big group of people. To talk volumes now.
There are about 5,000 SACCOs in this country, because that's really a solution. Right? SACCOs are nothing more than cooperatives. So the infrastructure is there. So I'm using the student, but unfortunately the SACCOs that we have in this country, what are they? So these are parents of these kids we are talking about who are, so what I'm trying to say is that there is money. So their mindset is the same. So they put their money together to buy land in some remote place that they're going to inherit this person who is in school who do not have a job, or who is going to school and they will never have a job in whatever they're studying, because that job does not exist. And the goal is to inherit them that land when they grow up. So they are jobless, but then you're inheriting them something when they're going to be 50 once you die as a parent, that is in the middle of nowhere. So there are two things that is going to happen. It's either that child is going to be very hopeless once they come out of campus and they will take to drugs or drinking, or overconsumption of entertainment. I would say that that's one of our problems. And the land is still there. So let's give an example. So you have 100 people who belongs to a SACCO. So let's say a SACCO has 100 members, and they together have on average 1 million, right? I'm just giving a wide example. How much is that?
100 million.
100 million. So they take that money and they dump it in some remote place. They could have started a small factory or a micro-generating power or a toothpaste making company or a toothbrush making company, factory. Again, now the son and the daughter who was going to be unemployed when you've packed money in a remote place in the middle of nowhere because of the hype, will come out and there will be an engineer needed in that factory. There will be a computer programmer needed in that factory. There's going to be a mechanic needed in that factory. So you're literally employing your own kids.
So what
by
you're
thinking
saying,
differently.
Yeah, what you're saying is, as a people, the generation before, that the generation that has access to capital, and I'm using this very loosely, is prioritizing the wrong investments.
Yes.
Number one, okay, by training their children for jobs that don't exist.
Yes.
Okay. In this sense, let me take it. Training children for jobs that don't exist.
Yeah.
How do you see? Let's use toothpaste for example.
Yeah.
How do you see a local toothpaste company setting up? Let's use a practical example, kabisa. A local toothpaste company setting up and penetrating the market over the existing companies that people trust?
Very simple. It's members of this cooperative buying their own products. It's realizing, yes, that product exists, but by buying that other product that is coming from abroad, right, or being sold by multinational, is draining our money abroad. And we are dying and we're going to collapse. And our situation gets worse by the day. Is by realizing that when I'm a member of a circle, right, a cooperative that has a factory, that it's almost, they have guaranteed customers that they're going to be buying that. So it's actually very simple. It's people being very cautious. And so far, there's very little we've talked about politicians. It's individuals, it's us. Sometimes I feel like the problems we complain about in this country, it's like somebody complaining that the government did not make their bed in the morning.
Let me give you a prom example.
Yeah.
I think not to blame our students when you graduate bado.
Yeah.
I think there's a narrative. I'm a subscriber to what you've said.
Yeah.
Like opportunities are there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But not everyone who doesn't have a job wants a job. And this is due to multiple factors.
Yeah.
One, okay, probably how majority of people have been brought up in a certain generation, getting the people who can come and coordinate like hivi ni hard. I'll explain. I was at Nation NTV for 10 years, okay? And at one point, we thought that we can open the platform for other people, and I made a public call. Yo guys, I'm looking for correspondents, reach out, tufanye job. Like, and I went and spoke to the management, na tukasema, the opportunity is open, and we had a criteria. Out of possibly 200 submissions that we got, we only got one person.
Who could actually do what you're requiring them to do?
One, yes, one.
Yeah.
And it was public. Send the videos through social media na kila mahali. One. And it was one person. We worked with him to the end. Tom Daktari, actually. That's how he just sent me a video on Instagram. We worked with him to the end. But not to look down on anyone else who sent. But I was like, bado kulikuwa na gap kidogo ya, niaje, we are looking for this. The opportunity is open now. We have faced the same problem looking for, like, we've actually found some people we can work with in what we do now. But again, the sample size, before you get someone, like, you can get 100 people saying they are journalists, but I don't know, I think the school system screws people some way. You can get 100 people, but only 5. Ukijaribu sana. When wako na iyo, like, by the way, we can do this. Like, iyo kidogo, we can share experience, but in very little.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So we may assume, yes, we have 10 million people who want a job, but out of that 10 million, have they been jinxed? Like, can we reset the system from this 10 million? Or this is for the generation that iko huko nyuma, the training iende yanzie huko nyuma?
First, if we wait for the generation that is behind there, we will have collapse. So they will not. I mean, we will be like a collapsed country. And we're talking about. We have examples of what happened to a society when it collapses, like what happened to Somalia in 1992, right? So you don't want to wait for that. So it is true that what we've done, we have staffed out for the last maybe 3 decades. We've staffed graduates with what I call theoretical managerial knowledge, right? And some of it within that there is we commercialized education, where the goal of most institutions is not to produce a person who is able to do what they are certifying that they're able to do. It's just simply we have gotten a customer who need to be we need to capture for the next 4 years, and they are equal X amount of money. So we're looking for occupancy of those seats, right? So we're not looking for what it is that they're going to learn. And so in there is also this mindset, because the person who is running, or the people running these institutions, their goal is not to produce the people that can actually produce things. But I call them men who are able to make products that we use and consume. So long as the check is coming, right? So I see people. I mean, I come from a small town. I think Thika is not a small town. Probably is a city now, and there are a lot of schools, whether it's to make hair or it's hospitality, and you're like, where are all these people, going to end up after graduating? Point I'm trying to make is that they themselves, to begin with, for the most part, were using more Kenyans to go through these programs. So your goal was not to get the content and to be thoroughly able to do what you are certified to do, right? It was simply to pass some exam. There are people who there are students who send someone else to go do the exams or pay them to go do the exams. So the goal is not, so that person, the journalist or whatever field they're in, their goal was not to be. It was simply to, and that's what I'm saying, the cult, that they're thinking this is like the 80s or the 90s, 10 years before they were born, where simply having a certificate or a degree open doors for you. So you're thinking you're looking for a paper. If you come to work with an engineer, let's say it's a router I need configured, I am not going to ask for your certificate. If you're an electrician, I'm not going to ask for your certificate. I'm going to tell you there's a problem here, please solve it. If you can't solve it, see the door, right? So that mindset is not there from the student himself or herself. It's also not there for the people running this institution. It's simply, how much have we met our targets in terms of the money that is, whether it's coming from help or it's coming from directly from the student, as most of them basically are private institutions that are looking basically to make a profit. They really don't care where you end up in your life.
Okay. One of the main points we make up to this level, the conversation at this moment, ni every time we go to the supermarket and we buy something made in China, made in Taiwan, made in England, made in Wapi, we are employing people outside Kenya.
Directly. Yes.
And you gave me an example, ukasema, the only money that remains in Kenya under those circumstances, near the logistics, the company that transported that thing to Hapa, the few managerial employees who could distribute kwa hii kampuni,
the banks and the bureaus that could change pesa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sindio?
Yeah.
Now, just a few people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have the money, but we are circulating it outside.
I wouldn't say circulate it. We are draining it abroad.
Draining it abroad.
Yeah, one way, never coming back.
And this is where the example, blood circulation versus blood drainage comes in.
Yes.
Kenya has money that can sustain our economy locally if we were to find ways to reduce the amount of money that we drain outside.
They say Israelis circulate their money, I think, I don't know, there's 12 times amongst themselves before it goes out. I don't know how true that is. There are communities that make sure that the money that stays within them, it's you who, you're going to a restaurant that is owned by somebody who is in your community. And I'm not saying that, so for a country, it need to be like that, where you know that when I'm spending this money, this money is my future, is the future of this nation, is the future of my kids. And leave actually the nation alone, because the nation is made of people. Look at your child, or look at yourself, and that by spending this money, when you're buying this product,
yes,
that you're literally sending something one way, and you do not have a way of getting it back. And it becomes a death spiral, where at some point, and this is where debt comes in, we for us to sustain this river, that is one way that is draining our money. Because it's a river, it's not a lake. We have to borrow money. We have to have donors. The other day, US aid was closed down, and it's like you would think that the US government is responsible over Kenyans in certain situations.
Yeah,
and people are crying, including government officials. They are crying that it's been closed down, as if it's a department of Kenya, right? Because we become so dependent on, I call them blood merchants, right? So these are people, predators, who realizes there's a way you can fix this drain and make it into a circle. But let's leave it as a drainage, because somehow those drainages are connected to their mouth. And by giving you more blood, meaning giving you predatory loans, they're also making money both ways. By having products coming from them, meaning where we're sending money to so we can get the product, and by transfusing us with blood instead of sealing and suturing this gushing wound. So they know the solution, but instead they're going to give us loans. Actually, that's the wrong term. It's not giving, lending us money, right? There's nobody who gives you, whether they're grants, there's nobody who gives you money. And they're called grants because they are so low interest, about 2%. But I was telling you earlier, between 2019 to last year, when the shilling is trading at 130 on average, we've lost about 32% of our value of our currency. 32%, right? So what it means, if you're buying, if they give you grants for 3%, so it looks like they're giving you free money, right? You have to pay this money in dollars. So that means you have to come up with 32% more Kenyan shillings than whatever you borrowed them. Does it make sense?
So the interest is 2%,
but
the value of the money goes down
by 32%.
Way low.
So basically, that loan is 32%.
34%.
34%. Just like that. So they gave you grant, but what they did, they also transferred what we call exchange rate risk. That when the value of the currency, your currency goes down, you are the one who is left with that risk, with that responsibility, with that obligation, and they still will be paid in dollars. So whatever the cost of the dollar that day. So, but, and this is a connection.
Can the value go down by 32% and the exchange rate remains the same? Like, can a shilling lose its value by 32% and still trade at 130?
No, the whole idea is that it's going down by 32%. If it goes down by 32%, basically it means you like going the other way. That's what you mean?
Ndio nasema, the dollar, let's say we have been given a grant, and the shilling is trading at 130, right? Yes. And then the dollar imebaki on average imekuwa 130 for some time.
130,
So it is through this period that it reduces value by 30%, but still exchanging to the dollar at 130.
No, I gave you between 2019 and when it became, 2019 it was, I think the shilling was 98 shillings. 98 shillings per dollar. 2019, just how many years? That's 5 years ago. So we've lost 32% within that period, right? So that's what I'm saying. So I was explaining that these blood merchants are giving you a loan, lending you money at so low interest you think, and you take it. Remember, because you're not circulating your money, somebody has to fill that tank. And that's where this borrowing is coming in.
Now, these blood merchants worse than the Shylocks wenye wako, like, and the finance organizations that exploit people locally.
So these are international Shylocks. They are called World Bank and IMF.
But then again, see, we still have local, like the Shylocks and stuff, and you explain it, unasema,
Yeah.
These people sell you money.
Yeah, so money is a product, just like the way this book is a product, or the bottle of water is a product. So money is a product. So somebody realizes, I have money, I can be selling this money to different people to make money. So the money that they make is interest, right? So for a Shylock, they will tell you, if you bring in your car note, right, or your logbook,
Yes.
we'll give you loan by what interest? 10%.
Yes.
And you hear 10% because the bank is giving you a loan by at 14%, and you're happy because you hear 10%. What you don't realize, that they are saying 10% per month, and that's 120% per year. So that means every year you're going to be, your loan, if you borrowed 100,000, that's 100,000 in 1 year if you don't pay it. By simply paying installments, it will be, it's like it's not moving because it doubles every year. So for 132, for the international Shylocks, because now it's 32, so every 3 years, if Kenya borrowed 1 trillion in 2019, that 1 trillion, if you haven't paid it, the principal, guess how much it is now? 3. Because 32, 34, we say
Yes,
34
yes.
times 4 is what? We are approaching, it's 100%. So in 5 short months, that which was 1 trillion goes up by 3 times, simply because of the exchange rate. And those are the blood merchants. So they know exactly how this economy can be solved, but instead they actually finance these multinationals that you see. They actually create conditions for them to come and work here. And that's what we don't see. We don't see the collaboration between foreign government with the foreign company or multinational working to make sure that they are creating conditions. It's kind of the same thing if you see, it's not conspiracy, it's exactly the way it happens. It's like seeing a shepherd with a shepherd, German shepherd, or a shepherd dog, and the sheep. If you came there, you would think the dog is doing some magic and is not related to the shepherd standing by, doing nothing, but just doing very simple whispers that the sheep are not able to interpret what is happening. But the dog is doing exactly, herding the sheep exactly where they need to be. And you think, so these multinationals, don't think that they do not operate with, I would give you an example. There is, so in this 2020, right? And this is actually where it becomes, there's a place I've said in the book, President Advisor, where Kenya is at war, right? And I've given examples of how these Shylocks, it's actually very interesting. These international Shylock, one of them is IFC, the private investing arm of World Bank, right? They've invested in our banking system and in our supermarkets. So I get confused that the Kenyan government is borrowing money from World Bank, but World Bank is making money in our economy in supermarkets. Does not make sense. Like there are supermarkets that are owned by World Bank in Kenya.
What do you mean?
Yes, sir. It's in dollar alta. So I don't know whether they have divested. When I was writing this book, IFC owned a piece of Naivas. That's public knowledge. IFC gave a 5 billion loan, 5 billion Kenyan shillings loan to Equity Bank. Right? So you look at this. These are people who are making, I think they're also in healthcare. These are people who are making money in this economy, loaning you in dollars, making money in Kenyan shillings, hedging the exchange risk of this money they have made by causing you to pay in dollars. I don't know whether you see that.
I understand.
Why are we not making money? Why is World Bank making money in our country and loaning us money that supposedly is from outside but was actually made here? Does not make sense. They are little stores you see that sell drugs. They are owned by billionaires abroad. So money is here. Why is a billionaire coming to start a local pharmaceutical store?
Irshad Sumra is on record. This greed, as much as we accuse multinationals of greed, I think I can submit that we are greedier. Irshad Sumra, former Embakasi South MP, said to me, I believe on record, we featured him when I was at NTV, that there's a tablet, I can't remember what that tablet was, that was going for 10 shillings in India. But when it hits the pharmacy in Kenya, it was going for 750 shillings. Right?
Yeah.
750 shillings. 10 bob, 750 bob. And that's one example, a tip of the iceberg of how rotten our business system is. Like at a trade to locally. If I'm selling something to you, nataka nikugonge as much as possible. And I believe that's what, in fact, when the China Square fiasco came, traders walikuwa wanakasirika, people were mad that China Square was spoiling the business for local traders. It's a very controversial argument, okay? And then sasa ikakuwa a balance between the consumer and the traders who are to make money. Ama the government is not putting policies enough to shield local business people. So one, can you have legit business without exploitation? Is it possible?
Yes, you can, but remember the culture of running over everybody to be number one. That's what drives our greed. And until we correct that psychology, that's going to be, the rot is going to be a lot. Does it make sense? So you bring up China Square, and I think the argument was this. There's a case to be made of should we allow manufacturers whose country has financed our inland train that brings good one way and goes out with money, bags of money or containers of money. You can see that. That's exchange between money. Should we allow that manufacturers of that country to come and open shops here? The answer is no. Whatever argument, we can talk about our greed, our internal issues, but internationally, you should never open doors for local, because basically, you're letting people to capture your market. I've said, as a result of allowing certain apps to operate in this country freely, without any barriers, regulation, and those barriers are important. And not to go ahead of myself, there's a reason as to why the US is worried about TikTok being in the country. TikTok has started like some sort of business, like an Amazon under TikTok in the US, right? So there's a reason as to why things like Google's are not in China or Facebook. They use their own apps that are locally made to protect their market, because they understand if you do not do that, you're creating a channel, a drainage system that takes money that way and never this way, and they will protect. But here they tell us it's free markets, right? So we talk about free markets. And I'll go back to, I don't know the idea I was trying to pump here, but we talk about free markets. So when you allow factories in China to come and operate supermarkets, because the one you just mentioned is a supermarket based where is here. It said those are manufacturers that open up shop. So what you're going to do is kill all these little businesses. And that money now, what you've done, you've actually made the drainage worse. Because the money that was going to many is going to one country. And we should not do that. We cannot do that. We are accelerating our death, our collapse.
Speak to someone who is in Form 4, just clearing school now, na mshikanishe na someone who has just graduated. What's the way forward? The job does not exist. Ushasema hivyo.
Yeah.
And I know the truth to that.
Yeah.
The job does not exist.
Yeah.
What next?
So it's a sad, I've said this to students, and first, the first thing that comes is shock. I remember telling this to a student who was doing something in computers way back in 2017. And it was like, I wish you told me this 3 years ago. He was just about to graduate. So that reality is important. When a student is getting into college, they should ask themselves, is my investment worth? Because as a college and a university is nothing more than an information supermarket. where I am giving you my money to buy what? What is the product? Information, knowledge that is structured. So if the knowledge that you're selling me, I'm going to have a title doctor, but I will never be able to practice because there is no work. Is it worth to even go into that college? To that, the answer is no. So you start asking, what is the need? What is needed? And I'm saying there are certain things that the student need to ask, but then as a society, there are things we need to create for this country. And the blind men in front of us, in all departments of this government, whether it's this or in the past, and in the future, I can tell you that. Unless we are wise, we're going to have basically people who do not understand that you can change. It requires very little. The things we're talking about requires very little. You don't need to create new universities. You just need to configure them, to tweak them, to produce what is needed in this market. At the same time, because now you have the power of government, creating what we call tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, to be able to prevent others from overwhelming your market or capturing your local market, such that now the people who are producing this product have a ready market. Like the way we were saying, if it's a group of circles that have decided, you know what, I mean, we're going to start petrol stations. Why are petrol stations in this country like have most of the money goes abroad because it's a company that is based in France? Why?
Someone would argue that their local petrol station, the branding is what's international. Oh, I trust Shell, I trust Rubis. So Rubis comes, if I have the money to invest, I can go buy the Rubis brand, open a Rubis petrol station, yet it's local. Someone would argue like
why? And they have a right to be here, and everybody has a right to be here. It's more of a freer market than it should be. There's a certain level of freedom that you should not interfere with, and you should protect your market. Actually, we talk about defense forces. Any government should protect its local market more than anything else, because that's where they get their money from. That's actually the first. When the government is saying our first goal is to protect life and property, property should be local market. If you don't protect that and you give that to someone else is making money in your economy, and you should be able to prevent that from happening. Because again, we're talking about ways to seal these drains and turn them into what? Into a circle. Money that is circulating here. So for example, so let's start with their parents. Because their parents have money. This person is going to school, right? That person can go to school if their parents start thinking differently. Why are they not the ones who are operating competitor supermarkets, competitor petrol stations with brand names? I mean, these kids are very good in graphics. They can create very good graphics and marketing. And when you think about all the people that I use, let's say Vika Superhighway, and they understand that when I go to that petrol station, that money is circulating in this country. How long, once people get this concept, how long will that take for people to start buying into, realizing that we are saving ourselves, not begging a politician to solve our problems?
Kuna kitu inaitwa youth fund.
Yeah.
On one hand, I spoke to their chairman, ni chairman ama ni CEO, akaniambia ati they have money but people don't go get the money. And I'm thinking in terms of access to capital, let's think petrol station kwanza, that example. I wish you can give us another example, because juicy people are flocking Astrol. I came to learn that Astrol is a local brand. Niliambiwa ati Astrol is owned by a Kenyan who awa chini ya maji. I didn't follow the story, but I was excited. Yes. Oh, mazi Astrol looks international nani? Ni local. So now to youth
and local can look international, because international is also coming from a nation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we can also be international by.
So now, kila mtu anaambiwa entrepreneurship, right? Strategies za access to capital. Tuko na youth fund, which I believe is a sleeping giant. I've always asked, why can't it be operated like NYS, like youth fund? In terms of like if a group of youth came together with a company. Because ulisema there are people, families, in your book, umesema, there are families yenye wanapika bila mafuta, but they are feeding avocado to dogs.
Yes. Because they don't know that there is oil. All that you need to do is bask it in the sun for a few days, squeeze it out, and oil comes out.
It expire?
No, very simple stuff. No, you bask it in the sun. Actually, that's like it becomes almost like black. It shrinks, you squeeze it, and oil comes out. There's nothing. There's no other process. It's actually, it's just a process. I mean, it's a process of squeezing oil from. That's all.
So to paraphrase,
Yeah.
unaweza pika chipo na avocado imeoza. That's what you're saying.
Technically, wewe unataka kusema hivyo. Lakini watu wasimix kwa squeeze.
Because I think you say the same thing about spaghetti pia.
Yes. Yeah. And that goes, so let me just jump in. And that goes to just how the level of damage that our education system has caused in our lives. That if you ask a regular person, a graduate, could be even that doctor, and you ask them what is, and I know this because I have a son who is allergic to wheat, right? And went to school, and on a Friday they were serving him spaghetti, and they gave him spaghetti because they did not understand that spaghetti is what? Is wheat. Spaghetti is nothing more than boiled chapati. So when you're eating spaghetti, just tell people today we are eating boiled chapati, because that's what it is. Literally, you can take chapati and cut it into little strips and put it in boiling water, and that day you have spaghetti. But we have to get our spaghettis from where? From Egypt, believe it or not. Why? So I'm saying the opportunity is just like some of this, it's both that we need to reconfigure our, and I think it's too late. CBC is doing some good, but these kids who do not have jobs, these graduates, we have to do something. It's basically taking them to a program that takes only a year or 2 years to restructure, to basically use, because the managerial skills are not helping. There's nothing to manage, right? And that's where the book 5 Fingers comes in. Our solutions are where? Right here. The things we can make with our skills is produce. It's like, why are you importing furniture? Like, if I may ask, do you know where does this look like it came from? Kenya?
Yeah, this was made in Kenya.
That's very good.
Yes.
Why are we not buying this? We should actually have the name of the company here.
In fact, Faith Nyongesa, who introduced me to Ojo, is a brilliant interior designer.
Yes.
She alifanya job poa sana ya designing Ojo, like the interior design, and she sourced kila kitu locally.
Yes.
And I always marvel at the quality.
Her name should be everywhere. Okay. My beds were made in Kayole. My sofas were made in Kayole. Like that's the consciousness with which, if we were to scale that up in terms of circles doing those businesses, stop investing in idle assets in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you see some places where these individuals and circles think, oh, how now do we make money from this economy? Oh, let's create a college here, producing people who are not able to do anything, because that the goal is not to produce graduates who are able to manufacture or do things, or be journalists who are able to stand in front of a camera and deliver, right? It's simply to make money off of that person. But then that creates another economy. They need a place to sleep. So they create bed sitters. So they are creating colleges for the purposes of creating what? So
I have struggled to get land in Embu because, and someone told me that's the phenomenon, like, do you know it is cheaper for me to get land in Kikuyu, which is a 40 minutes drive from Nairobi, yeah. But in Embu, Akianani, the place nezataka,
yeah.
Not
within the town or stuff, yeah.
I'm obsessed with a certain area. Mm-hmm. Now I can't get, because the perception that kuna Embu University, kuna nini. So people assume that when you're buying land, una target bed sitters for students. So the price is...
And we've become a nation of bed sitters, unfortunately, right? So, and if you look at, and this is how sad it is. So in finance, so if you look at the return on investment on those, in a building, and I've done the math, takes about 40 years to get your money back.
So 15, 10?
No, 40 years. And the rate, because first you assume 100% of occupancy rate. There is no, look at, like I came, Vika Road, everything I'm saying there is to let. To let doesn't look like a supermarket. That is like to let. to let, right? Actually, the word to let doesn't even make sense. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, it's constantly, you have these buildings, right? And this is when banks comes, because it's concerted effort. It's a student, it's a parent, it's a banker. This is where bankers are failing us, right? Bankers are failing us where, and I don't know why you should not be buying land. You should be starting a furniture factory or something that is able to employ people. But anyway, maybe you want to do farming.
For Embu,
maybe you want to do farming.
I know it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I know, but I have to. I don't know somehow.
So that's what I call idle assets, and that's why
we are going to assets. Tunakuja hapo kwa
tunakuja
assets.
hapa. So tulikuwa wapi? Tulikuwa kwa huyu student, right? So I'm just saying, yeah, there are solutions.
That's where banks are going wrong.
So these were banks are going wrong, right? The other day they increased the core capital of banks from it was 1 billion, it is going to be to 10 billion. And they said about 24 banks are going to be collapsing because they might close down, they will be forced to merge, and the truth is in the next 10 years if they don't raise that capital. How are they raising that capital? The owners, meaning the shareholders, have to come together and add more money, or they have to go into the market and sell shares, right? So that may not be possible. So what will happen, the bigger banks are going to buy the small bank. And that could be deliberate. Somebody is actually choreographing that. And I will show you how. Hopefully you remember. So this is where they're failing. They're failing because, so it's choreographed. So they're failing because they said those banks are going to collapse. And they have given loan worth 2.2 trillion, I think.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
2.2 trillion shillings within those, amongst those 24 banks. They're going to collapse because they require more capital. Why have they invested 2.2 trillion shillings in land, in houses that have return? That's what I call lazy investment, right? So somebody came with an idea, bed sitters, and you're like, it's visible, and that's our. It's actually it's like we're bewitched from the previous generation, right? That land, and if you want to make it, or you've made it in this country, you bury your money in land, literally burying in the soil, right?
But land is a definite asset.
Definite
means there is no more land that we are going to add. That's the argument, that land aiongezeki, only population grows. So one way or another, people will need land.
Well, but the country will have collapsed by the time you're needing land. So what would you rather be doing right now?
A balance.
A balance.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that people should not buy land, but I'm just saying it does not make sense to start a college or a university in a place to increase the value of the land around it.
I agree with you. That I agree
and
with
you're basically not staffing these kids with any knowledge that can transform this economy. And you're making money with bed sitters, where you could have simply started a factory to begin with.
To employ them. They're already marketing.
That's what I'm saying. It's a very simple.
Hapo tuko pamoja.
Yeah. So the issue is not land per se. And that's what I'm saying. It's idle, can make you money, right? Will make you money in way, probably 20 years from now.
Offers a better store of value,
yes.
Considering currency unasikia 2019 imeshuka na 30%.
Yeah, but at some point, there is also something we call liquidity. You might have you had people who have assets, but they are poor?
I know.
In cash? There are people who own land worth 1 billion, but they are very poor.
And they
have to depend on overdrafts. So there are people right now who are selling, I think, and this is also something that is choreographed from outside to control our food, our farming. So there are people designing certain policies coming through a board pen in parliament to configure our laws in a way that if you own land of a certain size, if you don't utilize it, then you're supposed to give it to the government, right? So, and we think that's very Kenyan. That's pressure from outside. First, because there are only very few Kenyans who can be able to buy that size of land. So you're basically creating a market for only very loaded people. So you're switching that land to someone else. But this is what is happening. So, and I was saying, people who they're rich in assets, but they're not rich in liquidity. So you start saying that they're going to be taxed at a certain rate. 5% of 1 billion is what? Let's say 10% is 100 million. So 5% is 50. So you are telling somebody to be paying taxes worth of 50 million every year. They don't have that. So what they're doing is running to subdivide that land and sell it because they cannot be able to keep it as an asset together, right? So, and everybody is holding some land, speculating, not necessarily they will ever do anything with that land. So everybody is basically, if you were here when everybody had kept quails in Kenya, all 40 million, we were 47 at that point, 47 million people had kept quails. Do you remember quail? They were curing like all manner of diseases. They resurrected a few people. I mean, they were powerful, right? That's the promise of the egg, the quail egg. Yeah. So what happens to all the Kenyans? We kept quails, right? So when you all have quails, who is the customer? So when we all are holding land, who are we going to sell to? When that time comes. So right now, jaribu kuuza 1 acre of land in Nairobi, na atanunua. It's only the subdividers. It's some circle that is going to say, we are in phase 6, randomly, in the middle of nowhere, wamepata phase 6. Jaribu kuuza 5 acres of land, even in Joska. Pamoja. Right? So it's just subdividers who are going, so we have quails in form of land scattered everywhere. Jaribu kupeleka kwa bank tuambie eti you're trying to get a loan with that. So you're going to have that kaplot somewhere where we could have put it again. It's already together because these are circles that are doing this. They're selling it to their members. I'm just saying the ideas are right in front of you.
Okay.
As a circle. So.
There is someone I meet and I was invited kwa event ya Centonomy. They do a great job ya kuchanua watu na financial literacy. If this is you, please reach out. Sikuweza either nilisave number vibaya ama nini. This was a gentleman who amefanya aeronautical engineering. Alikuwa anasema he has tarmacked for the longest time. That story lives rent free in my head kwa sababu I was wondering, uko na akili ya kufanya aeronautical engineering. You're a brilliant. When is star, okay? How much does the hope of what you studied for, ndio utapata kazi, hold us back? And how can we convert this? Si bado tuko na, there's a member of our team we make fun of him. It's a joke. Itwa Marage. We make fun of him sana juu. I called him kiwatao. Alafu he said nikamuuliza anafanya nini, he refused to tell me. But when he came after tulimaliza job ya production, we were recruiting him, bado hatukuwa tunamrecruit kwa skudi. As we are leaving, akachomoa packet ya tropicals ya kila mtu. No one in the team has bought the real reason alikuwa na hizo tropicals. But
lakini alikuwa tao.
Hata sijakuambia.
Alikuwa tao.
Sijakuambia, si ndio?
Mimi nilimwona kwa bus stop.
Aliruka. Na at least he can take a joke. But then again, it's a reality of graduates.
Yes.
Most people when you unaona the hookers, the motorbike guys, ni graduates.
Yes.
So I think this is what you say in the book, that ulitoka super, ukaona watu wakona manduthi, and you are like, we can do better. Probably ni your lack of, niliambiwa inaitwa information asymmetry. Like hawana access to that information. But this is a sleeping giant. Sindio? So, you know, there's a level of patience needed to start another industry. There's another level of patience needed to switch. Okay? You need to survive, but also you need to commit to a bigger dream. Okay? Niko na huyu jamaa amesoma aeronautical engineering, hana job walai. And inamaanisha if he can commit to the academic requirements to qualify to be an aeronautical engineer, right? He can commit to something else the same way that can earn him a living. Right? But there's also, na yeye sidhani alikuwa na ile pride ya I'm an aeronautical engineer. And the story of most graduates ni, mimi niko willing kufanya kitu yote. Nitafutie kazi yote hata kama ni kufagia, but I am a sijui biochemist, a scientist. You understand? Right? Na mtu anasema hiyo biochemistry scientist wanatengeneza sabuni, right? Na by the way, mkishikana mtengeneze sabuni, wale wasewa a guest challenged us, Gabriel Maketh, he came on the show akasema we have very many, in this case alikuwa anaongelea Luo professionals, hiyo kutokuwa, he was explaining wealth by cultural effect. Akasema you have lawyers, you have engineers and nini, but they can't come together to form an organization that can be a go-to to create impact.
Okay. And again, collaboration issues, competition issues. Number one, right? There are two things you've said. First, any profession, any discipline in university or college anywhere does not, for the most part, what it does, it confirms that commitment. If you didn't buy your papers and had somebody sitting for your exams, it confirms that. Secondly, education is nothing more than somebody's, in fact, when you graduate, it's basically confirmation that you can read. That's what education is all about. Every graduation, there's something they say internationally, right? Anywhere in this world, that now we have given you the power to read. Education basically just confirms that you can read. You say that one has to be patient. So this nation, this continent, this country, this economy is sick. It's in ICU, no matter who tells you what. And we have a lot of blood transfusion in this ICU. Any person who is sick, we call them what? Patient. So when you're a patient, you do not need patience. You already what? Patient. You actually take the name of patience. You become patient. So we are patient. So when death, and this is why, when you're facing death, collapse, all that you have to do is to focus on how you don't die. All these graduates, and this was saying, so we have first to remove the mindset of, I am doing something so I can stand out. Whether it's fame or it's like I can be the best thing. You know, I had these things that says, you know, he's 40 under 40, right? There's something in Five Fingers I've written called stolen with awards, right? Stolen with awards. Our information, like there are a lot of things that are stolen with awards. There are people basically because of this mindset of just number one. You get to spaces, you will consult for free, right?
Nimekuwa MC wa hiyo top 40 under 40 unasema. Nimekuwa MC wa hiyo top 40 under 40. Na ni top 40 under 40 ukweli.
Yeah, but they unfortunately we do not understand. And I don't, I'm not mixing things here, but your mindset yetu
stolen with the words.
Stolen with the words. Look, we tunakimbilia vitu, but we have no idea that somebody is actually trying to access information by those awards in that competition, right? So first, and we can talk about more of stolen awards because it's very powerful. It's saying first, the cult of competing with each other has to be dealt with by the individual first. We have to find ways of collaborating. There is nothing in this world, whether you're talking about a nation, you're talking about a company, an organization, a political party, there is nothing in this world, a church, that works by itself. It's not one individual. Like I said, the Aga Khan who just died, behind him were millions of people, right? You never see them, you see the guy, he's not in competition, he's doing all these things and it's his name that is coming up. Actually, his name is not a name, it's a title. Actually, it's like saying king, right? So point is to say, once we get off of that mindset, then the aeronautical engineer somehow can be able to collaborate with somebody from outside his discipline, and they can start working together to build something. It could be an app, right? Instead of having, why do we have one app in Kenya through which we can send money? Do we know how risky that is? The concentration of one app that made 2.2 trillion shillings in 1 year on where we send our money. There's one time it was hacked and all of us basically were in traffic because we could not buy petrol, matatus could not move, you could not buy anything in the supermarket. If you want to stop this country, stop one app, a single app that we use to send our money. Why? Why can't we have 20? Why can't we have 30? Why the aeronautical engineer cannot collaborate? In his engineering school, there were software engineers. Why can't he collaborate with others to make a local app that we are able to send money through? This 2.2 trillion, why is it going to a monopoly? Why don't we have jobs with engineers that can code all these things? We have, people come from Silicon Valley to have their codes coded here, or their software coded here in Kenya. Kenya is known for good coders, and I'm sure you know that, or probably you know some, right? You know some places, sharing spaces where you only have Kenyan coders, right? And they're coding for multinationals. Why can't they get together and start coding an app?
Just actually to give context to that, in Kenya we have people who do exams for graduates internationally.
PhD.
Umeisikia, si ndio?
Yeah, PhD level graduates. I'm like, nani PhD wanaambiwa kwanza punguza. Your level is so high, you need to tone it down. Like my professor is getting suspicious now. Those are Kenyans, that's our mind. So we are brilliant people. And I can tell you that, as somebody who studied abroad. Like I was, I would sit in a class and I'm like, somebody's asking a question, I'm like, I knew that when I was in Form 2. Like, nini mbaya, right? So brilliant mind. And until we have wealth, and our wealth is here. That theoretical knowledge, there is nothing, there is obviously a problem when it comes to manufacturing. We just need to tweak it.
Sawa, nimeshaanza kupata ideas ya mahali tutaweka pressure. Hiyo story ya banks, ulikuwa umesema you'll explain to us how someone is doing a strategy ya manipulating.
Okay, so some of these laws, right? You see, when you want to capture a country,
yes.
Again in President Advisor, I have a chapter I call Kenya is at war, right? For people who are here with strategies that are done in embassies and in corporate boardrooms to loot without shots, to raid without boots, to camouflage without camouflage, to haste with a keyboard, to empty our coffers with e-commerce, to monopolize us with simple apps, commercial apps, to dictate our energy supplies, to decimate our manufacturing, to dominate our banking industry, to do it in broad daylight, to do it in silence, and to do it while sitting next to the commander-in-chief, telling him to collaborate in money laundering, terrorism, and climate change, while for all intent and purposes, warring with him, telling others.
What does that mean? Like, you can't tell the commander-in-chief to collaborate with you in money laundering, like finishing money laundering and terrorism.
Yeah, so you're telling him, but then you're looting from him. That's what I just said. So you're looting from him, but then you tell him, let's collaborate in climate change, terrorism, and money laundering.
Yes.
But basically you're at war. Somebody has come, because what is war about? It's not about just shedding blood. It's about resources. So somebody has come, has strategized to take over your resources, but it's telling you to fight others while for all purposes and intent
yes.
is warring with you.
Okay.
So the question is, dominate the banking system. If you want to capture a country, capture its financial infrastructure, its banks and insurance companies, and that's what is happening in this country. And this is why when you capture a bank, right? Whether you have bought controlling shareholding, we have banks in this country whose ownership is in a cooperative, in a SACCO. A SACCO in Europe is the one that owns some banks here. A SACCO, a cooperative. Well, we should be doing that here.
But I think the cooperative concept started in Kenya.
Even if it started in Kenya, so there are people who took it up, right? The biggest dairy company, I believe, or cooperative in the US is a dairy company, and I'll tell you something about it, because there are people who want to sell milk in Kenya. from the
Tell
US.
us now.
Tell you now?
Yes.
Because I don't want to mix those two issues. Let's finish with the bank, like how the bank, and then we come to the milk, right? So the bank, this is what is a bank? A bank is nothing more than a common mattress where we keep our money together. It's that simple. So you bring your $1 million. I know you have it. I bring my 10 shillings. And we put it together, right? So they provide security so that money is not stolen. But it's a common mattress. Whose money is it? The government? Their money? Or our money, me and you?
Our money.
All right? So who should be in charge of that money? And how the bank uses that money?
Us.
Us, the depositors. Not even the shareholders. We actually have power, right? So, but when somebody captures the bank, and I will come back to that power, captures the bank, either by buying controlling shareholding in that bank, right? Or by giving convertible bonds, meaning that they give you a loan or they lend you money, which can be converted into ownership in the future. And that's a strategy of bypassing a lot of scrutiny and regulation. Or a hostile takeover. They come into the market, they say, you're listed on the stock exchange, we are offering this X amount of money, the share is 20 shillings, we are offering you 40 or 50, and everybody buy their and sell their share and they own the bank, right? This is the problem. I told you some supermarket, there are a lot of things that are owned by multinationals. There is nothing wrong with them coming to do business here, it's just that it's not good for us, the people in this country, right? And in this continent. So if, say, let me give you an example. If IFC, International Finance Corporation, which is the private investing arm of World Bank, has invested in a bank, let's say Equity, right? And IFC also owns shareholding in the supermarket. You're trying to start a supermarket called King Ori, right? Did you see?
Very nice one. Yeah.
Right? I saw that. I had to say that. I had to tell you that. So King Ori supermarket, right?
Yes, yes.
And you go. So you have some capital, but you need some financing, and you go to the same bank. This bank to start. You're starting a supermarket to compete with a place they have already invested. Do you think they're going to give you a loan? Let me repeat that again. They have invested in that bank and they have invested in that supermarket. Do you think they're going to, so that means they can control decisions in that bank, who gets a loan, and they can basically choose who is going to win and who's going to lose and who's going to even start. You're going to die before you get out of incubation.
You want to tell me, let's for practical purposes,
Yeah.
and this is just for example.
Yes.
If this corporation has invested in, say, Equity Bank and then with the Naivas,
Yes.
are you saying that they can't give money to QuickMart?
QuickMart is a wrong example because you should see where it's who has invested in it. I don't know the whole 100%, but I'm just giving an example. I'm giving an example. Remember, we're trying to put these graduates together to do something, right? There's a place you're going to need financing.
Yes.
So when you go to do together financing, right? So because you have certain capital and then you can convince the bank. When you have your banks controlled by other people outside, and those people have invested in other things in that country, right? Even when they have not invested, they can choose who they're going to.
Petty.
It's not petty, they're that strategic. Because we're talking about billions of shillings. We're talking about billions of dollars. I say the size of the market in this continent is $2.3 trillion of spending power. That goes through banks. And so they're not petty.
2 point?
Huh?
You say the spending power?
Is $3 trillion in the continent. $3 trillion.
That is
that 500 shillings we're talking about.
Annually, right?
Annually in this continent.
And how much do we get in aid that comes in to this continent in the name of helping us?
Let's say what comes in bits in this country. It's let me give an example. Sometimes when a currency is in a crisis, all that we are looking for, and we go to beg in IMF, is $450, $450 million or 700. And sometimes they don't give it in a bunch. It's a line of credit.
So it's way less than the purchasing power.
Exactly.
So this is...
And that's why they are also, remember, I mean, you cannot separate IMF and World Bank, right? And IFC, Bretton Woods Institutes. So I'm saying they see the capacity, the power, the money that they can be able to make in that very same economy where they're lending money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
To give an impression, now to answer the question of, let's say, for example, to break it down for the people we are talking to, our audience, and in terms of identifying opportunities. For us to win, we need to think like these corporations in how to identify opportunities. Angalia, for example, population people aged between 20, Gen Z ni wangapi? Let's say 10 million Kenyans wanna fall between, this is just an example. 10 million Kenyans wanna fall between 18 to 25 years. Then you think as a group, what product do they use daily, or what product do they need? And then how can you come together and how much can you solve their needs for this product to create an alternative for what they are spending on?
And you already have a captured market because your members, first and foremost, and now the educated audience is going to buy your product because they know we are circulating money here so we don't collapse.
So 50 graduates in Kenya who can come together in terms of resource, of the mind, of what they have learned. If 50 people come together, they can come up with an idea that can serve 1 million Kenyans. And this means they can form a livelihood bila kutafuta kazi. But how do this, what's one strategy of access to capital for these 50 people? One of them is youth fund, na tulisema hiyo conversation tukaipitia juu.
Kwanza nirudi hapo kwa youth fund. Youth fund, first, I have a chapter in Money Circles that I call I am a man, not a youth. And I think sometimes we are demeaned by that term. When you reach the age of 18, if you are to commit crime, we try you in our courts as what?
An adult.
Adults.
But
when it comes to other things, including politics, you're a what?
A child.
A child, a youth, and yet you're a man. A man becomes a man at 18. The day that picture on the ID, the first picture they take, that's the day they tell you you've become a what? A man. You try commit crime and they will say an 18-year-old man committed what? But when you're in the streets protesting, they say you're what? A youth. And youth in Kenya does not end until you're 35, which is ridiculous. With a life expectancy of 63 years, it does not make sense. So youth fund should actually be called the man fund. It's actually also very sad. And there is nothing wrong, because this is what we do. And I will say it. I don't know whether it's this. They are a group of people that somehow we assume they are powerless and we put them together. The youth, the women, and the disabled. And there is nothing wrong. It's just that that label does not make sense. And the people who are differently abled in this country should be the first people to say that you should not be putting us in the same group as people who are very abled, right? But that's how we see the young people who are the largest population, the biggest resource in this country. We see them as people who do not, that's how we are categorizing. That's how we see women, as people who are not abled. And you actually, in this population, I think there are more women as a special group, right? Women should be the first people to remove that label, right? And this is the problem with when we call that youth fund. It's a token, it's a political token, unfortunately. Because this is what you do, right? In other nations, you realize young, I will not call them youth, young adults may have certain ideas, but they do not have financing. An investor is somebody who have money, but they don't have ideas. An entrepreneur is somebody who knows exactly how to solve a certain problem. They have the idea, they don't have money. They will actually come looking for you. What youth fund is not tell people to get into a group Do you know what they do? Like, I mean, if you go, and I know all of us, when there is a matanga, mazishi, we all go to either Langata or we go to Ashags, right? They all buy tents and chairs. Quailpreneurship. Like, how many ideas can you come up with in this country with that kind of education that we're talking about, without reorientating people to start thinking differently? They're all going to do the same thing. The most easiest thing, tutafute nini tuanze
car wash.
Like pumps. And the people who, and I'll tell you, the people who push these ideas, right? Because it sounds petty, but it's somebody who, you cannot have a car wash without the pressure, right? There are people who go say, how many pressure machines do you have in this country? So there's somebody who will go influence a group of people because they have imported a bunch of pressure. So it's basically draining our money to basically loop you in a car wash forever. Not a thing that you'll ever get out of, right? And so the youth fund, this is what, you see, like the way we were talking about ideas. You say, bring a proposal, and not those people who are ready to steal proposals. Bring a proposal of a group of 10 people, and you tell us what is your training, not just youth, right? And what are you going to do with this money, and what you're looking for. Who will finance you? That's vision. Not this quailpreneurship of you basically exploiting, extracting wealth from the so-called youth, the men, by importing a product. You remember during, I mean, I don't know how true this was, because sometimes there are people who are very conniving. I mean, they'll create a law because they have already imported a certain product, right? So if it's speed governors or safety belt, there are people who will, they look at you, they're like, in this estate we can sell these many tanks, and they go to your local water company and they give them money to close off, to turn off the pipe, the valve, so that the landlord just decides, you know what, we need to buy tanks. I mean, that's how petty or greedy or silly.
That's greed, yes, that's greed. But then there's also on another level, yeah? So it's, okay, kuna hiyo umesema, that's criminal. Yeah, you go block the water so that you can come sell water to people. But now this one is like the graduates that tuko now when you say wajapata job, and people who are working and would benefit from exploring ideas that solve problems, right? Like identifying a problem yenye iko and you come with a solution. Politicians, I have heard that politicians in Kenya create a problem and then they solve that problem.
They will supply that problem. And that's the business. So they create a business opportunity for them.
One of the meanest nimesikia, but and this was there are politicians who allegedly burn down slums. And then they come the next day with unga, mattresses, nini. I've heard that.
Yeah, so that people think that they're generous, they are
yes. They are lifesavers.
They are lifesavers. Yes.
That I've heard. Hiyo ni moja.
They are called, and the international people who do the same thing. They will do the same thing, right? They will. There are certain things I can say here, and you will think they're conspiracies, and I actually want you to Google right now. Do you know you can use rain as a weapon?
Rain as a weapon?
Yeah, you can make a place flood, so you can create a crisis.
I would assume
you just need an airplane flying around with a silver iodide to seed clouds or dry ice, and you make it rain.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you can make rain as you want.
Like you can manufacture climate change.
Not climate change. You can manufacture weather. You can make it rain. Dubai.
Like there's a plane.
Sometimes you know, the other day, I don't know, I've not seen it anywhere, but it makes you suspicious. There are countries where they realize, and I don't know whether we're going off the track, they realize that if you, let's say we are political opponents and you have a certain stronghold, that voting day, I'm going to suppress your voters by making it rain in your stronghold.
We've not seen that in Kenya, but there are other places.
Places that has happened, yeah. So, but we don't know whether it has happened in Kenya. I'm just saying.
If we can check that information online.
The possibility to make it rain is not. It's actually what I want you to Google is rain as a weapon. Very simple, and you see what's going to pop up. So this is what I'm saying. That is not. There are strategies that are used in this world to create a problem so that people can come in and solve it, and they look like they are. It's very interesting. People who make bombs, they have a CSR, helping victims of war, right? But they're the ones who sold the guns and bombs. I'm just saying that's the world we live in. So point is, it's a very important point, and it's relevant to what we are discussing. Yeah.
Is this to say that business as we know it is a fallacy? Like, what's the truth about an opportunity that presents itself, right? And then you solve it and then you make clean money.
Yes.
Is clean money a facade? For people to go through those lengths of creating a problem before they solve it.
When you say clean money, you mean a lot of money? You mean because that money is dirty?
Dirty money. Yeah. Like if you create a problem and then you solve it and then you make money, that's dirty money, right?
Yeah, that's not clean money.
You understand?
Very dirty money.
So is this to say that clean money is a facade? Like the idea of, by the way, there's a problem, I'm going to solve this, and then I'm going to make money from that. Do those opportunities
they exist? Let's talk about the doctor who is saying that he's what? He's jobless, right? So because again, we also trained to go looking for a job. What if he volunteered? What if he basically looked for a space? Because that's all you need sometimes as a doctor, right? Because sometimes you're looking at the problem as there are things that you're going to refer. There are things for which medication is going to be the solution. There are things that diet is going to be the solution, right? And you decide, you know what, I'm actually going to be situated in a park somewhere. And I tell people, right, every Friday come, I have a clinic here. I'm just saying, like you're doing something. And I know that, starting very low, the thing I'm saying, opportunity, where is the opportunity? What about a group of doctors decides, you know what, we have this problem in this area, right? How can we get together and solve it? Let me also look at because some of the solutions, and I know you're talking about clean money, but before I talk about clean money, let's talk about like solutions, right? Because there are certain things I see that it's not all about making money. Like there are certain places where the solution does not need money to be gathered or business to be made for that solution to be solved. Sometimes you find places that it's rained, and there are swamps. And you have 100 people, and I like using 100 because you can extrapolate that and multiply it by 10 million, whatever it is, right? And there is a drainage there. There is a swamp that don't drain. The stagnant water, and you have mosquito. And of 100 parents here who have probably an average of 2 kids, so the 100 parents, they have 200 kids. So on average, they're going to the clinic every week to take their kids to the hospital because they have what? Malaria, right? And know that it needs. So they're spending 2,000 shillings every month each. Experience, that's what? 100 times 2,000 is 200,000 to treat kids with malaria because of the drainage that is behind their apartment. And they can literally use 2K to hire a pump and drain that water away.
Drain it where?
I'm just saying, some places because it's there's a foundation that was dug, the owner could, the next door neighbor could not build. They can basically drain it into the drainages.
My head went straight to a swamp in Limuru.
Yeah.
But in this example, see now unatoa jamaa wa kutibu malaria chapati kwa mdomo.
I'm just
because
saying,
so technically, by solving a problem, you bring the money to you and you take it from someone else.
Sometimes in life, that's very micro, right? There are certain problems that you're going to solve. Because right now, allow me to say that reasoning is like there's a book that is called The Lords of Poverty. You have NGOs in this country that will not solve problems right? Because they will be out of business. And there is a time Kakuma, I think, was going to be closed, and the biggest people who, the biggest shouters that should not happen, probably people who rent the runners of NGOs who rent their houses in big suburbs in this country, green leafy suburbs in this country, right? So that you do not solve this problem because you're going to lose renters, right?
Problem iko Kakuma, lakini beneficiaries wako Nairobi.
Karen, right? So there are people, that problem is those are captured slaves. And there's somebody who will not solve that problem because they have created a slavery economics around it.
Then there's also a problem we are not focusing on hapa. Yeah. Tunasema purchasing power ni 500.
Yes.
Do you know, kwa mse hana job, 500 is a lot of money.
A lot of money, yes.
Okay? Yes. So as we do this mathematics, your purchasing power of Africa being 500, 300 trillion.
Yeah. No, $3 trillion.
$3 trillion
yes, yes.
In
2030.
Okay, sawa.
Yes, but sign probably in 2.5.
2.5 trillion, sawa, 2.5. Yes. But ni 2.5, then this money is imaginary because najua comrades, like people who are done with campus, ata yo 50 bob ya kukula, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So if 500, someone who with a purchasing power of 500 a day, uni mudosi. As in 500 that you can spend in a day, uni mudosi already. So I think the problem we are solving hapa ni someone who has no access to ata hiyo 500.
We are solving that problem by saying, don't just go to school for the sake of going to school. That's one. Like make sure whatever career path you've taken, and whatever you're doing in school, you should not be there first simply to pass exams. That's number one. You as a person, you have to. You're in a supermarket that sells knowledge. When you leave that school, you should already have not just information, but capacity to do certain things that you are being trained in that school. That's one. Two, you should not, and that's the saying, they have parents, right? The other thing is like, don't just do things because it's simply what you like, right? Be flexible. Have about 3 things. Don't be stuck, I was supposed to be an engineer. Even before you get in that engineering, or you're 1 semester into it, ask yourself,
if this doesn't work.
No, it's not going to work. There's some things clearly we've said. There are people in school today, and we know there is not going to be work. And the solution in this country, our short-sighted politician want to ship that person abroad. Instead of solving the problems we're talking about here, or tweaking their skills, or loading them with the skills that they need to be able to solve the problems, because we have many problems. So we are telling international companies, multinational companies to come and solve those problems, while our kids, we are sending them to work abroad in those factories that are producing our soap. Umeona adverts za watu kwenda butchery, like kufanya job UK in a butchery, in a farm Switzerland. Hizo ndio tumeanza, basically we are sending slaves to make our tomatoes, to basically farm our tomatoes.
So to answer the question of how we are solving the problem, to answer the question of how we are solving the problem, if we started thinking in the mindset of, let's say, Basi, your purchasing power is 100 bob a day.
Yes.
If you were to spend 100 bob, that 100 bob on Kenyan products, there would be a change in terms of circulation of money.
Yes, there will be a big change.
That's basic. That's a summary.
There is a big change. We will save ourselves.
So ile kwa ile hesabu yetu ya in terms of opportunities locally, people in terms of thinking ya opportunities na vile people can make money is if we can start thinking of what collaborations can we make to tap into the spending of Kenyans ama of our fellow Kenyans ya chenye wao spend daily.
Yes.
So if we think like that, we win.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not complicated stuff, right? Why do we have oranges from Egypt? Why do we have apples from South Africa? Hizi saizi ziko sahi kwa hii season. Zinatoka wapi? Zote zinakaa venye zinakaa uniform. Egypt, why? South Africa, why? Like, why? Why am I eating comrade? Nasema comrade nakula mayai ya Uganda aje?
Ndio nashangaa, how is it cheaper to get eggs from Uganda than it is to get eggs from Kenya? Ama how is it that ni rahisi kupata machungwa all the way from South Africa than it is from Kenya? How is that mathematics?
Obviously, they're able to achieve certain economies of scale, but I'm saying there are certain things, no matter how expensive they become, there are certain doors a country should close and not allow certain products in that country. Like tax them so high that they do not, because so when you have oranges and apples and tomatoes that are coming from abroad, right? What you're essentially doing, because they're able to achieve like unbelievable economies of scale, what you're doing is killing what little production that we have, right? And I open there's a chapter there on how to, certain people are planning on how to kill farming in Kenya. That has been done in Ghana. There is like tomato production in Ghana, right? You kill that. It's actually very sad. You kill that industry. You go around and you send these kids to Italy to produce tomatoes, living in horrible conditions, working for mafias in Italy, to bring tomatoes back to Ghana as paste. Umeshaanza kuona kwa supermarket kuna paste.
Tomato paste.
Tomato paste. Sasa ndio ita replace ile tomato na marikiti. Coming from abroad.
Okay.
That's what they're being introduced to. So what I'm saying is, so all the production, because it's not just the farming, there is a logistics, there is a sorting, there is a distribution, right? So when what we should do, protect the things that we're already producing here, right? And by production I also mean farming, right? And there are certain doors we should close permanently, because literally it creates drains of money when we're buying apples, oranges, tomatoes from other countries. Those are things easily should be able to employ. Even that person who's done aeronautical engineering.
Okay.
What size of a farm do you need to produce enough oranges for Kenya? And at this point I should also say, kuna venye yani tuwabeba ufala. There are people from, I will say, other countries who are basically giving seedlings, avocado seedlings, like selling them for nothing, so that certain region have overproduction of avocados, and they have a ready market for that, and they're the only ones. So this is in China, and try to do a little bit of investigation and ask your investigative journalists to start finding out some of these seedlings that you find people buying for some hass of avocados and stuff. It's being produced by who and where, and what is the goal? The goal is to make, basically what you're doing, you're committing land in this country, hundreds of thousands of acres or tens of thousands of acres under avocado with free labor and land that you never leased, to be able to get people to produce something for you because you have a market for them. Not for them, you have a market for yourself for that product, and no money will ever get to these people. Sijui whether is this shocking? It's not conspiracy.
Na process.
Inalode.
So before tukuachilie, nataka utu explain the difference between trade and investments, but wadau kuna sijashika inaitwaje the dollar
altar.
Sijashika the dollar altar, but nimeguzaguza the money circles na the 5 fingers, and this is a solid money syllabus. So just to explain kidogo, chini ya hii video there's a description ya who Robert is, like what he does, ka profile kidogo tu, like ukiangalia chini ya video description, we have a link to each of these books to Nuria stores, which unaweza click alafu iletwe to wherever you are. Ziko pia Amazon, so from out of the country pia you can get an order of this if you want to challenge your mind about how the money system works. This is one of the most brilliant works za system ya do vile ina work, and we started this conversation na the blood analogy ya how the body inatumika na nini. Don't be out of the system. So kuna dollar altar hii sijaguza, hii naweza recommend, and the beautiful ideas ziko kwa 5 fingers. na hii ya Money Circles. Link ya each of these books and mali unazipata respectively kwa Nurio Style iko hapa chini kwa hii description, and to make it even better tutaiweka kwa pinned comment vile utapata kazi ya Robert Mwangi. Kama you are a big fan of ideas as myself, you'll find these books very entertaining and the examples are very relatable. Your story, what's the difference between trade and investment?
I will look at it from a macro level.
Mm-hmm.
The previous president went abroad to sell the country. I think that was the idea. And I asked him
to sell the country or to borrow.
Well,
we forget very fast.
What I mean to sell the country is like to be able to tell investors that we were ready for business. Actually, those are his words. We were ready for business, right? Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, was it like, are we? So what do we really mean? We're ready for business. Had we produced certain level of products, international product that can be able to be sold in international markets, whether it's clothes, or furniture, or pens, or computers, and he was looking for the market. All those apples and oranges, and we are like, we've produced so much, in this country, and we need to be able to access the market. So he was not trying to sell coffee and tea because we were already selling that, right? So by saying that we are ready for business, then you're going out there and telling people, come and set up shop here, right? Come, it's called foreign direct investment. So we're not exchanging goods and services. We're not sending products that we've made here abroad. That's trade.
We're
inviting people to come and sell product here. They're investing here. Put their money in a bank system. That's why our bank controls are being controlled by people who may not have the same interests as ourselves. They are selling products that we should be able to manufacture and produce here. They are setting certain shops that we should be able to set up with our own money here. That's investment. So you're basically putting your money in a company or in a country, whether it's in the treasury or in the shares with the or setting up shop here to sell product directly. But the goal is, for you, you're trading. But for us, there is nothing, we're not exchanging anything. So trade is an exchange of goods and services. With the kind of what we are calling trade or business by multinational is basically extractive strategy of extracting wealth from very poor people without any possibility of ever getting out of that poverty.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. We have a project with a friend of the show and a personal friend, anaitwa Ed Thiongo. He's one of the guests amekuja show yetu mara mob sana because he also understands money inside out. Yeah. Na we are supposed to start aliziita hackathons. It's an open secret. Whoever mwenye anaweza anza, hata ukianza watu wengi sana wanaweza fanya hii kitu because we want as many people as possible to access opportunities. So hackathons ni za entrepreneurship trainings na linking people to opportunities za biz. But hii sasa tulikuwa nafikiria watu washatoka labda. Do you think we can make a difference if we get people that are in campuses directly?
For the entrepreneurship opportunities or
ideas na opportunities.
Walete
Is
ideas.
It possible? Si hata walete ideas. Unajua watu wanafikirianga ideas zao zitaibiwa.
And that's what I was going to say. No, and it doesn't aibiwa by the way. Unfortunately, I'm just saying no. There are places where there are certain places where that can happen, but there has to be a certain level of protection on the person who is presenting the idea.
What's the best way to do it?
Obviously it's a legal contract, right? So somebody should not just send something. They should be able to know that their product, should not be disclosed to others and should not be used if it's some sort of competition, should not win. If it does not win, should not be used. That story should end here and should never be disclosed or used by someone else. And there's a lot of fear with that. And unfortunately, if there is a space where people can be able to give their ideas freely without the fear that the ideas are going to be stolen, I think that's a brilliant thing, because that's where if certain ideas come that can be able to be matched with opportunities or financing, that's exactly what we need. Is
can we set that up? Because I'm like conversation like this iache kukua story. Like, can we do something that has measurable impact?
Yeah.
In terms of like, mimi I'm open. Peaneni ideas. Hiyo kitu unasema ya collaborations. How can people be inspired to make collaborations, and probably we can amplify their stories za niaje hawa walishikana, huyu alikuwa lawyer, huyu alikuwa engineer, huyu alikuwa ni, they came together wakafanya kitu, they employed 100 people.
Yes.
Would that help?
Yes, and for me, and this is not self-conscious, like when people buy these books, the next phase of this book is actually activating the things that I'm talking about, is spearheading some of the ideas that we're talking about here, whether it's in financing, whether it's in making the people who are already producing stuff here become visible in the marketplace, right? Whether it's getting these circles to be able to see the opportunity. So now you have an opportunity to open their eyes into the things that will make change in their lives in terms of making money, and in their kids, instead of inheriting them things that they will not be able to inherit because they will die of drug abuse and hopelessness and drunkenness. Yeah. So the answer is, that's what I'm going with this personally. So basically, it's almost like when you're buying the book, you're financing the activation of the vision that I see here, and hopefully by you seeing that vision, we will be able to create things together.
Either if you don't buy the book to finance the vision, buy the book to actually challenge yourself in terms of how you think about money, and to actually open your inner eyes, hiyo macho ya ndani ya kuangalia how to identify opportunities na kuangalia the gaps zenye ziko kwa society with the money system as is.
Yeah. And if you right now, because I know there are people who may not in this season be able to buy the book, you can go to responsible.com. There is a sample of some of these ideas that I've left there. And if you want to support the work, you can probably put my number 0720661698 on there, and they can support in whichever way they can be able to amplify this message.
Wazi. Wiki make sure your number iko hapo hapa chini, and the link pia iko kwa description.
Yes.
Like you can read some of the ideas directly to online, si ndio?
Yes.
Ukisikia umeguzwa na roho ya kusupport, link pia ku get this book from Nuria directly.
And on Nuria, we're gonna give a discount on that book.
Yes.
So I think it's 1,400 of the thing. So what we're gonna do, we'll get it by morning. We'll change that price to 1,000. So 5 Fingers is on discount right now. So we'll change it.
5 Fingers inakuja na 1,000 bob na discount.
Yeah.
Asante sana. I know the effort inatekingi kuweka kitabu down.
Yeah.
Kuna kitu nilikuwa nimesema siwezi taka utoke hapa kama hujatuambia, and I know I'll hit myself kama I noted it somewhere. I hope
and for investment, what I should also have added there, I said investors are people who have money, but they don't have what? They don't have ideas, right? Traders or trading, I see it as entrepreneurship, right? So you're trying to solve other people's problem. If I buy a share into a company, I'm not actively involved in making the product or the service that they do, but I've actually put my money in a way speculating that the price of that thing, just like the person who's doing in land.
Yes.
So basically, I say investment is when you have money and you want them to be grown by someone else.
Yes.
Trading, you want to be actively involved in exchanging goods and services.
So hata nimekumbuka cha nilikuwa nimesahau, which was lazy assets.
Yes.
You said they are pregnant assets, lazy assets. Now, lazy assets has a very interesting explanation.
Lazy assets, and I think we went off a tangent. We're trying to say that some of the problems that we have in this country is directly related to bankers. Remember, we were saying a bank is a common mattress in which you keep our money. So instead of these bankers investing in us, right? Now that's what investing, financing our ideas, financing our entrepreneurship. They're mostly lazy. So they drain all the money from every town in this country, because there are branches of banks in this country. They're literally spectacles, right? Of the receivers of money, draining that money towards where? Towards the government. They buy treasury bill, they get a cool 12%. So for every billion, they're getting 120 million, right? Easy money, do nothing. But when they do that, because of that laziness, then what should have transformed this country in what I call pregnant assets that are able to produce things, right? The things we're talking about manufacturing, whether it's this person who is making this furniture, or somebody who is growing tomatoes, or somebody who is making soap or making clothes. And for clothes, I should actually say we have a lot of good tailors that are making products that are available in Walmart and Macy's and other companies in the US, and they're made right here in EPZ. That means we have the skills to make
Kenya.
those in Kenya. You can find something in the US.
There's another problem. If you have that quality sold that is made in Kenya, now wanauza Walmart, if they were to sell to the local market, they will price them in dollars that most people cannot afford.
But if you do mass production, what I mean, it's like there are certain ways you can reduce the cost, right?
Hii EPZ wanaisifu sana. Hii EPZ.
The thing is, it's the things that are done there. It's unfortunately they are political connections of people who basically have skilled people who are only producing product that can only be sold abroad, right? But I think that's changing, and that should change. And part of it is what we're saying. Like if we haven't gotten to a place whereby we are growing our own cotton, processing it, but at least we should start by getting the fabric, right? You have a lot of kids who are going to school and doing fashion and design, right? Basically, and I like that title as opposed to a tailor. This is a person who is able to make a product that is able to do what? To create a product that is able to circulate our money here, right? So instead of, so what our banks should be able to do is look at a certain percentage, right? Instead of creating youth funds or whatever, like banks should be able to also do that, contributing to that idea in financing ideas that are working. That every bank should have somebody who is actively in the community or online looking for people who are doing things, and all that they need is a little push, financing. They should be able to do that, right? The same thing, by the way, because whatever fund is the same thing. Don't wait for people to come to you, right? Go to people and tell them, these are the ideas, you and you can come together and do this. And we're going to bring experts, and they're housed in this location in Huduma Center. And if you have questions on certain things that you need to be able to have consultation for your business, you can be able to get that from this center. That's how active that we should be in encouraging these ideas, and not having banks investing in dead assets, that's land, 2.3, or bed sitters, or lazy assets in treasury bills. That yes, they're able to give them 12%, but when this pool collapses, they will. In fact, when an economy is collapsing, guess who collapses first? The banking system. It's always the banking system. It's always, any economic crisis, it's always a banking crisis.
I'll come back to the proposal.
Yeah.
How we can activate these ideas. I know you already have a plan.
Yes.
Yako.
Yes.
Nakupea proposal. I want to talk to Ed Thiongo kwanza.
Yes.
Na Tony Melo.
Yes.
They are some of the greatest business minds tumekuwa nao kwa show.
Okay.
And there are things tumekuwa tukiplan chini ya maji. I'll come back to the proposal. Na it's open. Mimi sina inaitwaje personal benefit. Kuna mtu ukisikia uko na idea ya how you can activate ideas kwa campus na wase wapate financing, do it. Hata because we can't finish unemployment kwa sasa.
No.
Oh, we can?
We can.
If all of us collaborate.
Yes, we can. It looks like a huge problem. But
and our fellow Kenyans who are stuck in employment that they feel like slavery.
What we need in that system, we talked about the drainages. It's looking for how we can create hearts in this system to create micro and macro circulation. That, and also in a way, because we cannot, if you have certain policies that have opened the channels of our money, so there are certain things, and I can tell you this, you cannot divorce an economy from politics.
You cannot.
You cannot. So there are certain things that instead of having and appreciate what Gen Zs have done, you know, certain wokeness and waking up of consciousness of how your problems, there are certain things that no matter what you do, you cannot be able to change them as a person, but the system, meaning the government, is the one that takes that responsibility of changing certain things. And so I like the idea that people are waking up to realize that there are certain things can only be changed at the government level. So it's to understand, first, we do not need to wait for every 5 years hoping for some savior. There are certain things we can start doing right now. But when it comes to policy, you should be able to be sending to parliament people who have, and I'll use these words, a thinking brain and a heart that cares for people who are getting into hopelessness, for things that can be changed in an instant by people who are representative. In fact, there is an article I wrote on afresponsible.com that wanted to change the title. I'm pushing for the change of the title of Member of Parliament. Not a member, it look like an exclusive member of some high
end club.
End club. It should be delegate. We should just change that name to delegate. It's a delegate that we've sent to go solve our problems. And when you send, pushing for policies, because those policies are made by politicians, right? So you should be able to have people who don't look for people who have money, right? Look for people who have ideas.
People who don't have money.
I understand. Like, there is going to be a change, right? There has to be people who are purely concerned about the welfare of the society, not really their stomachs. So, like, but part of it will be influenced by stuff like this, by people who do not have collaborators' mind, or short-sightedness or blindness, greedy mouths, lying tongues, and bottomless stomachs.
Robert, thank you for sparing time ukuje kushare knowledge na sisi about politicians. I have so much to say. Tukianza sahi hatutamaliza. So what we can do, you cannot of course separate from politics.
Yes.
As we speak, hata nimepata ideas za people na najua we can ask publicly in terms of policy.
Yeah.
In terms of kama hiyo youth fund sana.
Yeah.
Okay, of course nimeelewa why your
it should not
analogy.
It should be man fund.
Nimeelewa. What about the women? Gender balance.
Well, it's not gender bias. In fact, in the book I've said,
Equate enterprise fund.
Enterprise, exactly. Because in the book I've said, even the man who has who in front of that title.
Sawa. So nimejua watu tunafaa kuchokoza. Please, if there are other ideas zenye tumeacha kwa hii nini, please let's engage tuajiwe. We don't, me hata sijui. Kama mtu anaweza finance, if you can come up with an idea to employ 100 people, sawa, it's open. It's not Mimi Robert.
Yes.
But we've had something tumekuwa tukifikiria behind the scenes na Ed Thiongo na Tony Melo. We can actually set that up. We'll share that information publicly. And I think the first place kwanza ni campus, and we'll have an open forum for where we can make linkages between ideas na people who have money but wanatafuta mahali pa kuiweka.
Yes.
Asante for sharing knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me. This is very divine, and I need to say that it's coming. Initially was set for the 19th. It's the eve of an anniversary of something that happened and changed my life, and this confirms that the work that I'm doing here is divine. It's God.
Amen.
It's God given. I have pursued purpose in my life and not money. I've known that mangoes don't eat mangoes, and these ideas, if they I think that's how people end up being crazy. If you have all these things, I mean, like, I know what you've been reading is just in my mind and you have no idea. I'll just be in a corner somewhere thinking. But I'm glad that you've given me this opportunity to amplify this message. I really appreciate it.
No, our people, when you wanna watch, mimi pia nakuanga tu messenger, cause this platform is people driven. Tunaambianga watu siku hizi approach with an open mind. Hata mimi, this show has a life of its own. I would be selfish to say ati, oh, mimi sasa niaje giving an opportunity. I believe by the kiukweli, the greatest blessing we've had we've been able, there's a lot of noise in the content space, but being able to just, niaje, Robert has good ideas. And we know people will listen and they will also engage, okay? And they also understand, we have benefited a lot from constructive criticism, and we have always, like, it's grace beyond what I can explain. So, hata mimi, I thank God for we have an opportunity to engage, and let's take it to another level, actualization. If we can have measurable results, labda tuna blame politicians for no reason.
No, there's a place for politicians. That's what I think most of these discussions have revolved around things we are able to do for ourselves, right? And we should be able to. There's a place where no government will come and make my bed, in the morning after I wake up. So there's a thing that. So we thank God.
Cheers to measurable results.
All right.
Aye.
Appreciate it.